Hi everybody, thank you for joining me today. I'm going to show you the process that I do to make a nebula. So first thing I did was actually spray paint my block of canvas all black because I really want a secured background so no other white of the canvas would show through as the paint spreads and thins, because I only want white for like 2 bright stars and maybe some other stars in the distance. So first I wanted to tell you that when you mix your paints, using Floetrol is the best thing you can use to help spread the paint around. So I will use a black paint mixed with Floetrol, and I actually had some sparkle paint, but it's not sparkle paint, it's actually sparkles that you put in paint. And I found it in the paint section when I was looking at some ceiling paint, because years ago I did a house where I put some sparkles in the ceiling. So I want you guys to know that if you add sparkles to your paints, they kind of get lost and dissipate in the paint as the paint moves. You can put some sparkles on top of the paint as it's almost dry. That might keep the sparkles there. Otherwise you need to buy, oops, excuse the bouncing, you need to buy paints that are sparkled in there already. And like I said, the only other way to do it is if you buy the sparkle paint that's made for paints. That way they don't sink and get lost. So remember to shake your Floetrol really good before you get going on that. And then I'll show you today's mix. Okay, as we get ready for today's mix, I wanted to show you what we're going to try to mimic. I do watercolor as well, and this is a painting that I made, and I want to try to mimic that in acrylic. That's my little nebula. So there's glass over it, it's in a frame, so sorry about the glare. But I did want to tell you those markings that I got in there were made by rock salt, because it's a watercolor. So when you put the rock salt in the paints in watercolor, it separates like that. And that's how you can get all those little cells, I guess you could call them, for watercolor. So that was my tip for when you do watercolors. Also, I like doing watercolors a lot because it dries really fast and you get to see your work and enjoy it a lot faster instead of having a lot of paint pile up. And another little trick I want to show you today for any painting is when I use a paintbrush or sponge or anything, and I know I'm going to be using a lot of that color, I just wrap it up in even a baggie or a piece of plastic or whatever, and then when you unwrap it, and this brush is from about 10 days ago, and you can see that it's still just really fresh, and that is a really good tip, so you can keep that. Okay, so what I want to tell you now, I'm going to go ahead and start the flow with the black, and I want to spread it around a little more this time so it's not so thick, so I don't get pinholes and stuff. And it'll be easier to flow, and it'll be a shorter drying time. But, oh yeah, first I want to show you today's mix. So I have the titanium white and the goldens, which we won't be using white until the paint is a little bit drier, after it's done moved a little bit. Then I use the phthalo green, and I mix the phthalo green with just a Walmart 2 green, like 95-cent paint or whatever. And then that's that. It turned out really nice. And then for the blue, I used the phthalo blue, and it turned out like that. And then for purple, I used, sorry about the bump, guys, the Concord Grape, also another Walmart brand, mixed with the ultramarine violet, Golden's ultramarine. Then the black is just the regular black, Golden's black. Trying to find the name here. I'm getting lost in my own stuff here. It's just the Mars Black. So I use the Mars Black. And then for red, I use the Pyro Red mixed with a Walmart brand called Red Apple. And it turned out really pretty. I didn't want to use any magenta. I wanted to stick with the bright candy apple red for my nebula. And then for pink, I used the Walmart brand called Honeysuckle Pink. And that turned out beautiful too, right here. Look how pretty that is. And I mixed this with, I want to say, a 50-50 ratio from paint to Floetrol, and a little bit of water in it. And I did put a splash of dimethicone in the pink only. So this is an experiment, and I want to see how that turns out. So now we'll get started on the black background. Okay, so I'm going to take the sponge, I'm going to put some paint on here, because I do want it to be kind of thick, but I don't want it to be so thick that it kind of takes forever to dry and the paint moves so much that you can't see certain things when you make a design. It kind of disappears. But I'm just going to put this on right now, but I want to do the edges. And you know what? Honestly, I should have done the edges earlier, so that way I don't have to worry about if I made any mistakes. It's easier to clean up if this is dry. So I'm just going to paint these edges. And sometimes edges can be easily touched up, but the problem is if you're doing a pour or a flip cup, that's kind of hard to touch up the edges because you want those drip lines. You want that canvas covered in that part. Also, I have a really good way, like when you want to do the edges, if you don't want it to get on the painting itself, you hold the sponge at an angle and you kind of line it down like that, and that's, or a flat brush, and that kind of helps too, so you can not get the paint everywhere. You just kind of want it in a line. Of course, if you take your time a little bit, it turns out really nice. There you go. Okay, well, that's good enough for the sides. Let me get this back in focus here. Okay. So usually what I do when I do a negative space pour painting, and I like to put, some people just put it right directly on the canvas and blow the paint around. If the other paint is thin enough, you can blow it around. But I like to do it like this because you can really blend it. And I do want to get some bubbles out now. So there, I think there's enough paint on there for blending. And like I said, this is also an experiment just for, I've never done a nebula in a acrylic before. So let's see how that works out. But I'm going to take the torch first because my background, I really don't want bubbles on there. I'm just going to quickly go over it. Yeah, that's good enough. I can see some bubbles that popped. Oh, I still see a couple more, so I'm going to get those. Alright, now, I do see a little bubble right there, something. I'm going to get that out there. That's fine. Okay. Now we're going to start with the nebula colors, and I wanted a nice bright sky. And let's have some fun, guys. Alright guys, on to the grand finale of this nebula. So this is how I imagine the colors of the galaxy. Mostly black, but there's some pretty colors shining through. After I did the painting and the paint settled, the black did kind of take over its spreads because it was the background flow. And this is just what I wanted. I wanted like a little area of just darkness and having some colors shine through. And then I'm going to use a pure opaque white. Kind of did a titanium white because it's really, really white. But it's thick, so I mixed it with a little bit of just Walmart white. It's just appleberry, or apple barrel. And mix that in so it's not really thick. Because it's kind of hard to get it off the brush when it's really thick. And I do like, there's many ways to add stars. So I find when using like a toothbrush or a fan brush and how people just like pull back on the brush for stars, I find that those stars are kind of like at a slant and they all look like shooting stars or whatever, and I don't want them all to look like they're in movement, and I'll just use a brush over brush method, and I'll show you how I do that. I take a brush and I dip the paint in the brush in the paint, and then I hold a brush level over the painting and I tap it like that, and that's what gives you can have a little control over where the stars go as well. And then when I'm done, if I see I need another spot or I wanted to add a star to it, I just kind of take one of these little metal round, has a little round ball in the end, and I'll dip it in the paint and I'll just add a star. Like I'll do something like this. Just kind of add a star where I get to put it right where I want it. Like that. Okay. For some special effects, I like to add a little orange or a little yellow in the back of some of the stars. And it's kind of fun. It's really fun to add stars, and I never get too bored playing with the colors, and I like to just add some stuff and make it really fun. So, and then if it doesn't work out to your liking, you can always change it. So like a little yellow in there, like that. And I have 3 of these with different sizes, but I'm not going to dig out the other 2. I'll be fine with just this. And I kind of blend a little orange in there. Kind of makes the stars really pretty. Because, you know, there's lots of crazy stuff out there in the galaxy. Really pretty shooting stars and crazy looking stars and all kinds of fun stuff. So you can do it however you want, however you imagine the galaxy to be. Like this one a little bit more. Like that. Okay. Now I'm going to do the brush effect. I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so you take a long brush and you just hold it level, and then you take the smaller brush, the brush that you want to get some good paint on there. You don't want to overload it. I just have it like that. And you hold it over here, level, like I said, and you just tap. And you get different sizes. And I like to take the load of the paint off when I first pull it out, because I don't want big globs. So I kind of have to, you know, tap it or take a load off. And of course you do this once the paint is dry. There we go. It's perfect. Just the right amount of stars. And what I want to do too is add like a star right here. Another star over here that's kind of big. And then I'll go over that again so it's a little thicker. And actually I'm not liking that one. So I'm going to wet my fingertip and get that one off there. Actually, sometimes some mistakes that you make can look kind of cool. So I just want, kind of wanted a brighter star. A nice big bright star. Alright guys, this is about the end of it. And I'll let that dry, and I think it looks good. I'm going to do a couple more because it does kind of fade. A couple more splats. Oh, nice. Never know what you're going to get, huh? Gives it a really nice dimension. Really kind of cool. Put a little Makes a little yellow in that. All right, everybody. Let's do one more up here, the white in there. It looks kind of like it's almost like a little something out there in space. All right, guys. Thank you for watching.